Okay.
So I welcome all the participants in this third session of our reading, and I now request Professor Bhate to start today's session. Yeah, please, madam.
Okay. Thank you, Mahesh. Uh, I hope you don't have any questions, queries, remarks on what we did last time. But still, if you have, you can speak anytime, as I told you earlier. So today we begin with the rule Saha Supa 214. Sup iti vartate. Saha iti supa iti cha trayamapi adhikrutam veditavyam. So from the earlier rule, sub amantrite parangavatsware, that is the second rule. Rule number 2 is continued. Vartate is often used in the sense of anuvartate. So here it means the word sup is continued from the previous rule. And saha iti supa iti cha trayam api adhikrutam veditavyam. So these three words, sup, saha and supa, they are to be understood as governing this section, or they are to be understood adhikruta literally, and quite often even Dishti Joshi translates as appointed, assigned some task. So here I think it is better we understand it in the sense of either anuvritta, continued, or governing the whole section. So this is obviously an adhikar rule, and therefore Kashika says that all the three words in this rule are continued. And actually, together with samasa, we have four words which are continued in the whole of the samasa section. So, supa, saha, samasaha. And all these four words, they always form a part of the text of each and every following rule. This we have to always remember while interpreting every rule that follows. Yad ita urdhvam anukramishyamaha tatra idam upasthitam drashtavyam. Whatever we will be serially arranging henceforth, ita urdhvam is henceforth, anukramishyamaha. Serially, we will state serially, in order. In that, these three words should be understood. Drashtavyam, seen, always in this scientific text is understood as known. Upasthitam, as present. So, in whatever we will be arranging or stating henceforth, this should be understood as present. Yad itaha urdhvam anukramishyamaha tatra idam upasthitam drashtavyam. Vakshyati द्वितीया श्रित इति द्वितीयांतं श्रितादिभिः सह समस्यते कष्टं श्रितः कष्टश्रितः. So vakshati sutrakarah. Panini will say Ditya, Shrita, Tita, Gatita, etc. That the rule we are going to read very soon. And then he explains the meaning of the rule as Ditiyantam Shritadibhi Sah Samasyate. Actually, he should have, at least while interpreting the rule, incorporated all the four words. The Kashikakara should have done it, and then it would have been a proper illustration of this rule. Ditiyantam Shetadibhihi Saha Samasyate. It means that a word in the accusative case is compounded with the words Shrita, etc., which are mentioned in the rule. But if this has to be a proper illustration, we can rephrase it like this. Dvitiya shitatita patita gatatyasta praptapannaihi saha supa sup samasa. So that is the complete text of the rule, Dvitiya shitatita, etc. These are the 4 words which are missing in each and every rule, and they are to be supplied in order to complete the meaning of the rule. This is the implication of the Adhikar Sutra. That he has not shown here, but that would have been better. And Kashtam Shitaha is the illustration. Kashtam is a Dvitiyanta Shabda, Dvitiyanta Pada. It's a word ending in the accusative. Shritaha is one of the words which are listed in that rule, and therefore there is the samasa takes place. Kashtam Shritaha, Kashta Shritaha, one who has resorted to hardship, one who has taken to hardship. This is the example of Sahasupa. Sahagrahanam yoga vibhagartham ingapi saha yatasyat. The word saha in this rule apparently has no purpose to serve. When this question is asked and when the answer, this particular answer is given, it implies that the word is actually not required in order to complete the meaning. And simply because, many times we find that the meaning of saha is understood even without it is being used. Even Panini has, at least in a few cases, which I remember, he has not used the word saha, and even then the meaning of saha is understood. For instance, the section dealing with the rule of ekashesha, sarupanam ekashesha ekavibhakta, and in that section there are a couple of rules where you find the word saha missing, but the meaning of the word saha is very much present there. For instance, there is a sutra like Vruddho Yuna. It means that Vruddhaha Yuna Saha Shishyate. Or Shvashuraha Shvashirva, which means that the word Shvashura along with the word Shvashru remains. So when Shvashru and Shvashura, they come together in order to form a compound, instead of both the words being compounded, only one word remains and the other word is dropped. This is Eka Shesha, Ekaha Shishyate. And here also you will find Shvashurau is the Eka Shesha of Shvashurascha, Shvashruhucha. The word Shvashruhu is dropped there. And this has been stated by the rule Shvashuraha Shvashirvaha. So there are many other examples also you will find. So it is very clear, and also in classical Sanskrit, you may find some more examples where you will find the word saha is not mentioned, but the meaning is understood. And therefore, he says why the word saha is used. It means that sahagrahanam vyartham. The mention of the word saha in this rule becomes futile, purposeless, useless. And whenever a particular word in a sutra is found to be useless or purposeless, then you are not allowed to say that it is purposeless, but you have to assign some task to that word. And that task is of indicating something additional, something which is not stated in that rule. This is the process of a particular technical phenomenon called Jnapaka. And there are several Jnapakas in the whole of the Ashtadhyayi. Whenever these commentators, they come across a certain word which apparently is purposeless, and they take it to mean or to convey something in addition to what the rule conveys. Thus here he says, Sahagrahanam Yoga Vibhagartham. Saha Supa appears to be one single rule for us. But for the commentators, there are two different rules. So one rule is Saha and the other one is Supa. This is known as Yoga Vibhaga. Technically, this is called Yoga Vibhaga. Yoga Vibhaga is perhaps the coinage of the Mahabhashyakara Patanjali. I'm not sure whether Katyayana uses it, but it is found for the first time in the Mahabhashya. Yoga means sutra and Vibhaga means division. So here the sutra is divided into two, and this division is indicated by the word Saha. How? What is the logic behind it? No logic. The only logic is that if we don't assign some function to Saha, it becomes futile. So Vyartham Sahagrahanam Kim Jnapayati Idam Anyat Sutram Yoga Vibhagam Jnapayati. So this kind of a Jnapaka or suggestion they try to obtain from the word Saha, and thus the task they managed to get performed by this Yoga Vibhaga is to account for certain compounds which are otherwise not accounted for in Panini's grammar. And such compounds, he gives an example here, they are compounds with a tinganta, with a verbal form, with a finite verb. So he says, Sahagrahanam Yoga Vibhagartham Tingapi Saha Yathasya. So that a soup can be compounded with a tinganta. And this additional meaning is achieved by this Yoga Vibhaga and by splitting the or separating the word Saha from Supa. So after Yoga Vibhaga, what happens is that the rule Saha means Sup Saha Samaset. So Supa is not continued in that way. Sup Saha Samasaha Bhavati. It means Sup together with something becomes a compound. And that's something you have to provide. You can supply it by looking into the usage, obviously. And therefore, words like Anupvyachalat or Anupravarshat, they can be regarded as samasa. And what is the advantage of making them a samasa or accepting them as samasa? The advantage is the accent. Otherwise, there is no any advantage of calling them samasa. But accent, and both of them, they appear in the Vedic literature, and their accent in the Vedic literature is otherwise not accountable. We cannot explain this accent. Samasasya antaha udattaha is a rule by which the udatta on the final syllable of both these verbal forms can be accounted for, can be justified. Those who were attending this Panini workshop, they might remember that we were talking, we discussed this particular Karika from Kondabhatta's Vyakarana Bhushana. Actually, this Karika comes from Bhattuji. Supam Supa Tinga, Namna Dhatu Natha Tingan Tinga, etc. So among the 6 kinds of samasa, there is one type in which there is a compounding of a subanta with a timanta. So this samasa has been accepted by later tradition, and there is no provision of forming any samasa with a tinganta in Panini's grammar. So somehow they were looking for some kind of a loophole in Panini's grammar where they could fit in this samasa, Vedic samasa, or this Chandasa expressions, these expressions. And this is how they could justify these samasas with the help of the word saha. And thus he says sahagrahanam yoga vibhagartham. Actually, we can explain or justify the mention of the word saha in this sutra by saying that the word saha implies sahitya, togetherness, which again is one of the very prominent characteristics of a compound. In a compound, the two words are always very close together. And there is a karika, if you remember, those who have studied Siddhanta Kaumudi or any other similar text, Samhita Ekapade Nitya. And in that karika, he says, Nitya Samase Vakyetu Sa Vivaksham Apeksha. Samhita Ekapade Nitya Nitya Dhatupasarga Yogo Nitya Samase Vakyetu Sa Vivaksham Apekshatu. So in a compound, the Samhita, the closest conjunction of both the words, is obligatory. It is invariable. It is nitya. You cannot have any option by separating the two words, even by half a matra. They have always to remain very, very close together. So this kind of ekapadatva sahitya, also you can call it, can be understood from the word saha. Or Panini might have used it in order to emphasize this particular feature of samasa. Samasa. And therefore he says saha supa. So a subanta together with a subanta is called samasa. So this togetherness is indicated by the word samasa. This also could be the meaning of samasa or purpose of samasa. And then we also can say that this togetherness further implies aikarthya. That is again a very, very prominent characteristic of each and every compound, that a compound conveys one single integrated meaning. So unless they are saha together, and if they are saha together, naturally they convey the meaning also saho together. So they do not convey meaning, each component doesn't convey its own meaning separately in isolation, but they both together convey one single meaning. So either aikarthya or sahitya or both together, you can say aikapadya, can be suggested. We can say that it is suggested by the word saha. This is my suggestion. And if we agree, and it is very clear that Panini never talked about Chandas compound, like compound with a tinganta, then we have to justify the existence of the word samasa in the sutra. And this is a very good argument, I feel, to justify it. Then we proceed to the next sutra, because the similar sutra from the Chandra we have already read, and that is sup supa ekartham. This is adhikara, and this is the very first tool in the Chandra Vyakarana. So it also contains these words sup and supa. Chandra doesn't include the word saha. Chandra has omitted it, obviously, because Chandra Vyakarana, or the author Chandracharya, doesn't feel it necessary. So Chandra we have already done. Let us then turn to the next sutra. Or maybe if you have any question or any remark to make on this rule, you can do it right away. And then we switch over to samasa.
Just one question, I mean, about this compounds with the tingantas. I mean, so for Panini, at least we can say that he was not really intending this type of compounds. And they were only the features of the Vedic language. Can we say that, or are they kind of something of similar sort in the Mayuravyamasakadi?
I'm sorry, it's very difficult for me to hear. Maybe perhaps if you put your video on, I can. It is always the case. I can't hear properly. Ask any question. Why is that so? I don't know. My voice is clearly audible, isn't it?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Madam, your voice is very clear, and sir voice is also very clear.
Can you hear me now? Is it better?
Is it, if possible, you can make it either slightly louder or try.
Okay, I'll try to speak louder a bit. So my question was that, so can we then say that for Panini, the compounds with the tingantas were not really, I mean, intended? I mean, he did not really want to have such compounds, or has he given kind of some of these in the Mayuravyamasakadi Gana? I mean, which takes care of all this kind of irregular kind of compounds? Are there any such compounds in the Mayuravyamasakadi Gana?
Well, I haven't gone through the Mayuravyamasakadi Gana. If it contains any such compound with a tinganta, very well we can say that Mayuravyamasakaditvat siddham. And then this purpose of saha actually is dismissed. Then we don't need. But Mayuravyamasakadayascha, if it doesn't contain any such compound, then obviously the only conclusion we can arrive at is that Panini did not want to teach any compound with a tingan, because such compounds they don't exist in the language that was spoken during his time. They belong to because they are all Vedic examples. So they belong to Vedic literature. And if at all there existed any exceptional compound, Panini simply did not bother about it because there are exceptions.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
Madam, myself Rujuta Bhatt. Can I ask you one question on this, ma'am? One doubt.
Please louder.
Hello. Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you hear, ma'am?
At the same time, so that I can hear you, maybe, probably, because last time when the video was on, I could hear it clearly.
Yeah. Hello.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, can you hear me, ma'am? Clearly?
Yes.
Yeah. Ma'am, here I wanted to ask that Anu Vyachalat and Anu Pravarshat, only such Shishta Prayogas can be formed with this, or can other Prayoga also be formed, like with the Subant and Tinganta?
Actually, so far, the commentaries have mentioned only these Vedika Prayogas. They are not found in classical literature. But taking advantage of this Yoga Vibhaga, someone who wants to write something in Sanskrit may use a compound with a Tinganta. So you cannot call them as Shishta Prayogas. If you mean by Shishta Prayoga a word used or a phrase used or a sentence used in the classical literature.
Yeah.
In that case, actually Panini doesn't allow such compounds. But since the Yoga Vibhaga exists according to this tradition, then maybe someone can form it.
Okay, ma'am.
Am I clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And is there any mention from where onwards this yoga vibhaga started, ma'am?
I said it is for the first time it is found in the Mahabhashya.
Okay. Okay, ma'am.
And at one place, if I remember correctly, he says Ishta Siddhartham Yoga Vibhagaha. So whenever Yoga Vibhaga is resorted to, that is meant to justify a certain usage which the sutra otherwise cannot justify.
Okay.
So
Okay, ma'am.
Yoga Vibhaga is one of those devices. I have been talking about devices in my Panini class quite often. Devices or Tantra Yuktis. They are different, solutions to the problems in terms of usages which cannot be explained. So Yoga Vibhaga is one of them, and there are many others.
Okay.
Devices have been listed by Ranu, a French scholar, in
Okay.
edition of Durgata Gupte.
Okay.
And even Kilhorn quite often mentioned the devices used by these grammarians. So it is, one very distinct aspect of the technique of interpretation adopted by the commentators.
Okay.
May not be that
Okay. Okay. Okay, ma'am.
it
Thanks.
is not
Thank you.
interpreted by Panini.
Yeah. Okay.
Otherwise, tradition would have given the rules like Saha and Supha. But
Yeah. Yeah.
this as an artificial division of one single rule into two, which means that Panini did not mean it to be two rules. Panini meant it to be one
Okay.
single rule. So Yoga Vibhaga is one such thing.
Okay. Okay, ma'am. Thanks.
Shall we go to the next sutra then? Okay. Avyayi Bhavaha. Yes, one more adhikar. Avyayi Bhavaha iti adhikaro veditavyaha. Yan itah urdhvam anukramishyamaha avyayi bhava saudnyaha te veditavyaha. So one more adhikar continues from here. So in the following rules, there will be 5 words which will be added to the text of the sutra. And the 5th word will be avyayi bhavo. Adhikaraha veditavyaha. So whatever henceforth we will be explaining, stating serially, they should be understood as having the name Avyayi Bhavo. So here Kashika clearly mentions that Avyayi Bhavo is a Saudhnya and therefore this is a Saudhnya Sutra. Avyayi Bhavo Saudhnyaha te veditavyaha. And perhaps I might have referred to the variety of ways in which Panini states Saudhnyas, and one of them is by listing, by simply giving adhikara. And that we also, last time we saw, even samasa is also a definition by enumeration. Taditaha is a definition by enumeration, and so on and so forth. So many. So this one also is just a purely formal definition of Avyayi Bhava. Nothing semantic about it. Panini doesn't explain whether in Avyayi Bhava the Purva Pada is Pradhana or Uttara Pada is Pradhana, or in Avyayi Bhava Samasa finally results into an Avyaya, it leads to an Avyaya. Nothing like that. He simply says whatever I am going to state in the following sutra should be called Avyayi Bhava. And this is what it does here. Vakshyati yatha asadrushye. So there is a rule which we will be soon reading, and that is yatha asadrushye. The avyaya yatha is compounded with a samartha subanta when it conveys a meaning other than sadrushya. All the details we are going to talk about when we will be dealing with this rule. So I skip all those details. And the example is yatha vruddham brahmanan amantrayesva. So the meaning of the example also I will explain. Yatha vruddham is avyayi bhava samasa, where yatha is an avyaya and it appears as the purvapada. Anvartha saudnya cha iyam mahati पूर्व पदार्थ प्राधान्यम अव्ययी भावस्य दर्शयति. So anvartha saudnya means a significant name. So whenever a particular word or a name is given to a certain object or a person, considering the fact that the meaning of that name reflects a facet of that object, then the name becomes anvartha saudnya. So to give you a very, very common example from our day-to-day practice is, somebody, a girl is called Rose. And if you find that she is called Rose because her complexion is pink like rose, or maybe very, very soft like rose, or she is as beautiful as rose, then it becomes an anvartha saudnya. Or somebody is called Suhasa, and the word Suhasa literally means having a beautiful smile. And we find that the person, the boy who is called Suhasa, always gives you a beautiful smiles. So he smiles very sweetly, and therefore the word Suhasa is quite appropriate, quite suitable, quite fitting. This kind of fittingness, this kind of appropriateness between the name and its meaning is referred to by the word anvartha. Artham anugataha anvartha. So the word follows the meaning. Artham anugata. The saudnya follows the meaning. Artham anugata. And in case of avyayi bhava, he says that avyayi bhava is not a meaningless term. It is fully meaningful in this context of grammar. And what does it mean? Avyayi bhava means the state of becoming an avyaya. But in addition to that, it also implies that whatever becomes an avyaya, because it becomes a compound by these rules, is previously not an avyaya. And therefore it is a, they say it is a chvi construction. And this is what I have shown it on the paper. You can see it on the paper, and we will discuss first we will discuss the derivation of this word avyayi bhava. Anavyayam avyayam bhavati asmin. Avyayi bhava is a compound or a word in which that which is not an avyaya becomes an avyaya. Or you can say anavyayam avyayam yad bhavati. That which becomes an avyaya, that which is not an avyaya becomes an avyaya. And that is called avyayi bhava. And this is derived by adding the tadjita suffix chvi It's a very strange suffix. So first we add the tadjita suffix shvi to the word avyaya by the rule krubhvasti yoge sampadya kartari shvihi. This is from the Swarthika section of the Tadjita Prakarana. Swarthika subsection, you can say, of Tadjita section. And there is a Vartika. We have to read the rule together with the Vartika. The Vartika is Abhuta Tadbhave iti Vaktavyam. Yat Abhutam Tasya Tadbhavaha Yada Bhavati. So what is not becomes that. Is that. So whatever is not an avyaya becomes avyaya. This is abhuta tadbhava. And anavyaya becoming avyaya is abhuta tadbhava. So if this kind of meaning is to be conveyed by a particular word, then add the suffix chvi to that word. So the word chvi is, the suffix chvi is added. And there is one more condition you mentioned in the sutra is that krubvasti yoge. Krubhu asti yoge. So chvi added along with the connection yoga with a form of either of these three, that is krubhu and asa, which means that the word ending in the suffix chvi is not allowed to stand alone. It always stands together with the subsequent verbal form. And therefore, you always have to add either bhu or kru or asa and its further form. Either you can have a finite verb form or you can have a krut form of that. Here, since we have avyayi bhava, akrudanta, we add a krut suffix na, which is again taught by not by any sutra, but by a Vartika. And that Vartika is mentioned on the paper as Bhavater na upasankhyanam. I'll be later talking more about this Vartika and all that, because I found the whole procedure very interesting when I went through all different commentaries which try to derive this word. Anyway, so after we add na to bhu, and this bhu na is connected with chvi, then we have avyaya sa chvi bhu na all together. Then at the next stage, the case endings which are added, or here we have only one, is dropped. The case ending added after avyaya sa is dropped by the rule supodhatu pratipadikam. Of the suffix chvi, nothing remains, because e and cha, they are anubandhas. They are simply dropped by the rule tasya lopaha, and what remains is just va, consonant va, and that also is dropped by the rule ver apruktasya. Apruktasya vehe lopaha bhavati. Vehe here means vakarasya. So the whole of the chvi is gone, so is gone. So finally we have avyaya bhu o. At this stage, the rule asya chvau becomes effective. By the rule asya chvau, akarasya ikaraha bhavati chau parataha. And therefore, a at the end of the word avyaya is substituted by e, dirgha e. So it becomes avyayi. Even though chvi is dropped, by pratyaya lakshana, its existence is understood as far as the grammatical operation is to be carried out. And therefore, the rule says asya chvau. Akarasya ikara bhavati. Because of the anubandhana in the suffix na, there is vruddhi, by the rule achoiniti, and we have bhav. U of bhu changes into au. We have bhau, and that bhau further changes into bhav, or rather au changes into au by the rule echo yava yavaha. This sandhi rule is very well known to all. Thus, we finally arrive at the word avyayi bhavo. Now, this is how the commentators derive it. When I was looking for this upasankhyanam, bhavaterana upasankyanam, the very first question that arose in my mind, let me share my own views about this derivation, although it's a kind of a slight deviation from what we are doing. But I thought perhaps you might go deeper into that, and it's a good topic also for a small paper, small article. The derivation of the word avyayi bhava. So when I was looking for bhavaternaha upasankyanam, this vartika, which is mentioned in the commentary Padamanjari of Kashika, is not found anywhere. I checked in the Mahabhashya, so there is no vartika of this type. On the contrary, what I found was in the Kashika, on the rule 31143, I'm sorry, I couldn't find time to mention it because I found all these things just 1 hour before we started this class. Therefore, I could not incorporate all these things. But I can tell you right now, you can note it down, the rule number 31143. Third Adhyaya, first pada, 143 is the number of the sutra, and that sutra is Vibhasha Grahaha. So I found in Kashika on this rule, there is a small vartika saying Bhavatescha iti vaktavya. So what I want to point out is that even the text of vartikas differs from Mahabhashya in Kashika. Kashika gives a different text. And even the commentaries on the Kashika, they give a still different text, which we find nowhere. Here is a text of the Vartika, Bhavaterana Upasankhyanam. And this kind of Vartika, this text of Vartika, at least I could not find in the whole of the Mahabhashya, where we also find Vartikas. I could not find it in Siddhanta Kaumudi either. Because when I checked with Siddhanta Kaumudi on the same rule 31143, Siddhanta Kaumudi simply says Bhavatescha iti Kashika. So Siddhanta Kaumudi refers to Kashika and not to Mahabhashya. Bhashyakara, along with Katyayana, Vartikakara, they don't bother to give any such additional rule like no upasankhyanam or bhu. Now what do they achieve by this upasankhyanam? When I checked the commentaries on this rule Vibhasha Graha, I found that they try to account for the forms bhava and bhava. Bhavati iti bhavaha, bhavati iti bhavaha. And Siddhanta Kaumudi further says bhavo devaha samsaraha. So bhava is derived by the same rule because it is optional. Vibhasha Graha is optional. So we have either no or perhaps ach. I will have to check, but some other suffix. So this is a suffix in the sense of kartru, bhavati iti, and it gives you the derivative bhavo, alternating with bhavo. And then this derivative, according to this whole procedure which I have shown on the paper, is to be compounded with the word avyayi. So avyayam bhavati iti avyayi bhava. This is the meaning implied in this whole procedure of derivation. Whereas I have given this meaning avyayam anavyayam avyayam bhavati asmin, which leads to a different kind of prakriya. And that prakriya which I have in my mind is adding the suffix an to hu in the sense of bhave. Sorry, not an, gai. Whether such rule does not exist, because I thought ghai is the rule which can certainly be helpful here in this derivation. So avyaya sa chvi bhu ghai, if we add ghai here, we can certainly get the same form avyayi bhav. Instead of that, tradition has used this vartika bhavaternaha and suggested that the suffix na is to be added here instead of ghai. But in that case, the vigraha of that samasa changes, because then they derive the word bhava separately, avyayi separately, and it means avyayasya bhava or something like that, avyayi bhava. Very difficult to actually understand the laukika vigraha, constituent analysis, because avyayi we form with the addition of chvi, and bhava we derive with the addition of no, and then they come together, something like that. So you may think about this, but I simply wanted to share with you my own impressions about these commentaries. Sometimes they quote some vartikas which do not exist, and sometimes they give derivations which also appear to be very strange. But in any case, we finally arrive at the word avyayi bhav, and we somehow understand the meaning of the word avyayi bhava. Whether it is an adjective or it is a substantive is a question. It is a saujnya, no doubt, but it is avyayi bhavaha samasaha. In that case, it would be an adjective. But avyayi bhava traditionally can be rendered as avyayi bhavanam, becoming avyaya. So it refers to a particular state. And now how it is anuvarta saujnya? Because number one, we have already seen, simply because whatever is not an avyaya becomes an avyaya, and therefore it is very, very significant. But Kashika appears to be not very happy with this explanation, because this is not enough for Kashika. Because Kashika says, Anvartha saujnya cha iyam mohati purva padartha pradhanyam avyayi bhavasya darshayati. Avyayi bhava indicates that in each and every avyayi bhava compound, the purva padartha is always pradhana, that is, it is always principal meaning. So we have two kinds of meaning. One of them is principal and the other one is subordinate. For instance, Neelam Kamalam, Kamalam is the chief or the principal meaning, and Neelam is subordinate to that. Visheshanam. Visheshana is always subordinate to the Vishesha. Qualifier is always subordinate to the qualificant. So this type of division is often made by these commentators. It is often found also in the usage, and the same thing we also find in the process of compounding. One of the two members of the compound is chief, principal. The meaning it conveys always is regarded as the meaning of the whole compound. So it is chief in that sense. And naturally, the remaining is subordinate. To give you a very simple, easy example is the compound Radnyaha Purushaha, Raja Purushaha. So in case of Raja Purushaha, the meaning of Purusha is chief in the sense that the whole compound always denotes Purusha. It does not denote Raja. Raja, the meaning of Rajan is always subordinate to the meaning of Purusha. In that sense, I am Uttara Padartha Pradhana. So the subsequent or the latter constituent, the meaning conveyed by the latter constituent is always principal. And the meaning of the remaining constituent is always subordinate to that. So here in case of Avyayi Bhava, we always find that the meaning of the Purva Pada, and you will find that mostly in all the cases the Purva Pada is an Avyaya. So that is always Pradhana. After the compound is formed, the meaning it conveys contains the meaning of that Avyaya as the principal. This is what he wants to suggest. And when we go through the examples, when we will later on we'll deal with the examples, this point will be more clear. And you will find that later tradition, while distinguishing among these different types of compounds, always says Purva Padartha Pradhana Avyayi Bhavaha, Uttara Padartha Pradhanaha Tatpurushaha, Anya Padartha Pradhanaha Bhuvrihi, and Ubhaya Padartha Pradhanaha Dvandvaha, and so on. So it is always either of the two, or in case of Dvandva, both the compounds, both the constituents of the compound, which convey principal meaning. So there is no subordinate and no principal as far as Dvandva is concerned. So in every compound, you will find that this kind of relation changes. In case of Avyayi Bhava, it is always the Purva Padartha. Purva Padartha Pradhanyam Avyayi Bhavasya Darshayati. It means all Avyayi Bhava contains the word Avyaya, and thus we understand that Avyaya is very important in Avyayi Bhava compound. Avyaya, which is one of the constituents of the Avyayi Bhava compound, is always very important as far as the meaning of the whole compound is concerned. It plays a very important role. This is indicated by the word Avyayi Bhava. Now, the commentaries are still not satisfied with this much, and they further tell us, because naturally they a few questions arise after we take this interpretation of Avyayi Bhava. And one question which they have dealt with is, there are at least a couple of rules which teach Avyayi Bhava compound with a Subanta as the first constituent. So there is no Avyaya. We'll be soon dealing with such rules. So it's not an Avyaya but a Subanta, which is the Purva Pada. In that case, do we understand that the meaning of that Subanta is Pradhana in an Avyayi Bhava compound? No. This is what is indicated by Avyayi Bhava. In that case, the Avyaya, which is the latter constituent of such compounds, is still Pradhana. So Avyaya, whether it is the Purva Pada or the Uttara Pada, always has a very important place, or you can say the chief place, in forming the meaning of that compound. So even in cases like compounds with the Subanta as the first constituent and Avyaya as the Uttara Pada, it is the Avyaya whose meaning is always to be regarded as principal or Pradhana. This is what is suggested by Kashika when it says Purva Padartha Pradhanaha Avyayi Bhavaha. And this has been brought out by the commentaries on Kashika. Thus, Avyayi Bhava is a very pregnant term, pregnant with these 2-3 meanings. First of all, Avyaya is the first constituent. Secondly, because it is the first constituent and therefore it is always Pradhana, it influences the meaning of the compound, and thus it becomes avyayi bhava. It influences the form of the compound, not meaning. It influences the form, because avyayi bhava compound further becomes an avyayo. There is a rule. We will be dealing with that rule. Avyayi bhavasya is a sutra which teaches that every avyayi bhava compound is an avyayo. So the first member of the compound, the purvapada of the compound, is avyayo. So inside there is avyayo, and outside also there is avyayo. That means the whole compound also becomes an avyayo. These are the two meanings which are implied, and the third meaning which is implied by this word avyayi bhava is that avyaya always plays a very important role in forming the meaning of the compound. Either it is purvapada or uttarapada. This is the third meaning which is added by the commentators on Kashika. So this is how we have to understand the word avyayi, understand the sentence or the statement that avyayi bhavaha iti iyam anvarta saudnya. And there also he says mahati. So mahati actually refers to the assumption by the commentators that Panini always uses short terms, saudnyas. And there are a number of times these commentators refer to that by saying that lagvartham saudnya karanam. A saudnya is always supposed to be making a very abridged statement, a short statement. Lagvartham saudnya karanam. Saudnya cha nama yato na laghiyaha. Saudnya is that than which there is nothing shorter. The saudnya is the shortest possible expression of a particular content. So in that case, why should Panini use this saudnya avyayi bhava having 5 full syllables? Otherwise, he uses very short terms. He uses tigu, gaba, etc. This kind of, what should I say, craze for laghavu, brevity, exaggerated craze for brevity is imposed by the commentators on Panini. Because Panini has taken full freedom in using long terms like sarvanama sthanam, sarvanaman, and there are a few other terms also. Karma pravachaniyo. And everywhere Panini doesn't use long terms in order to suggest that they are anvarta saudnyas. So anyway, this is again yet another device, and mahati is a very deliberate word used here, suggesting that this doesn't fit with Panini's technique. Otherwise, Panini uses very short saudnyas. And why does he make use of a very long term here? It must have some purpose to serve. Anvarta saudnya cheyam mahati purva padartha pradhanyam avyayi bhavasya darshayati. Avyayi bhava pradeshaha, avyayi bhavasya ityevam adayaha. Pradesha is a rule where a particular saudnya or a particular paribhasha is employed. Theory and practice, we always distinguish between it. So it's a practice. Such rules are called pradesha. So this is about this rule avyayi bhavaha. I had actually taken longer on this. Do we have any such thing in the Chandra? I don't find anything here. We have straight away to deal with the rule asankhya vibhakti samipa, etc. So Chandra apparently does not define Avyayi Bhava. And does he use the term Avyayi Bhava? Even that I don't see here. But those who have already read Chandra Vyakarana, they can perhaps give us more information about it. Whether Chandra Vyakarana calls it Avyayi Bhava anywhere else, if not here.
The Chandra grammar, as it is well known, it is a Saujnyakam Vyakaranam. So he avoids Saujnyas as far as possible. He rather believes in using
that I know.
Saujni, yeah. And so instead of Avyayi Bhava, we do find, of course, the term, and that is Asankhya. So Asankhya Samasa, Asankhya Ekartha is a term which in a way replaces Avyayi Bhava in the Paninian tradition. Yeah.
Sorry, something went wrong. I'm
Did you
sorry,
hear me?
something went
Yeah.
wrong here. Okay. Yes,
So
Mahesh, will you please
you-
repeat, because my
Yeah,
mobile had...
yes, you are audible, madam. So, yeah, what I was saying is that Chandra basically, Chandragomi does not use the term Avyayi Bhava. Instead of that, what we find in his grammar is Asankhya Ekartha. So, Asankhya is his term for Avyaya, and Ekartha, as you know, it is Samasa. So, Asankhya Ekartha is the term which we find instead of Avyayi Bhava in Paninian tradition.
Okay, so he doesn't give you a classification on the basis of Saujnyas, like Tatpurusha, Vyayi Bhava,
yeah.
is that right?
No, there is a distinction, but of course, I mean the terms which are used in the Chandra tradition are for Avyayi Bhava. He uses the term Asankhya Ekartha. For the Tatpurusha, the term used is Karaka Samasa, and the Samanadhikar. I mean, basically for the Karmadhara, it would be basically a Visheshana Samasa. Yeah, Visheshana Ekartha, not Samasa, I should say. So Karaka Ekartha, Visheshana Ekartha. And in this way, so he uses totally different terminology. So instead of Bahuvrihi, he uses the term Anyartha Ekartha. So that is Bahuvrihi. Yes, and the Dvandva is in his system is called Chartha Ekartha.
So this is, so all these things, they are not Saujnyas, but they are descriptions, isn't it?
Yes. So that's why I was saying that he prefers to use Saujni rather than Saujnya.
And the purpose is economy.
Yes, that is also, yes, it is
What
one of the
cost?
purposes. Sorry?
At what cost?
I mean, see, the question of Saujnya is basically you're used to something, but I mean, if you're used to Ekartha, then you don't have to define. I mean, for example, Asankhya Samasa, you're not defining it separately. So it is Asankhya, but then you call it Avyayi Bhava. So you add a step. So that's a Chandra position. So when instead of Saujni, when you use the Saujnya, you add one more step to it, and that there is a Gaurava there. So he prefers just to refer to Saujni rather than Saujnya. So he will not say Vruddhi in his text. He will say Adaich. He will not say Guna, but he will say Adeng. So this is how he works.
Mahesh, if I may add, we do have a definition. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
We do have a definition in the Chandra system, in the Shabdartha Chinta. Ratna Mati is defining this compound which we're discussing today. So he says, Prag Padartha Param Yat Syat, Anyartha Paramam Cha Yat, Napumsakam Bhavet Yat Cha, Tat Asamkyam Iha Ishyate. So here in this grammatical system, in the Chandra system, the experts prefer to call that compound a samkhya, in which either the meaning of its first member is prominent, or the meaning of another word qualified by this compound is predominant, and which, with regard to its gender, is neuter. And then Ratna says, Shastra antare prasiddham yat avyayi bhava namatah, upakumbham tat unmatta gangam ityadi udahritam. So this is the brief way in which a Chandra representative is giving the definition of Vyai Bhava in the Aikartya Nirdesha of the Shabdartha Chinta.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, but does it all not mean that only with the help of the commentaries we really understand the purport? We really understand the whole business of a samasa. So if we just go with Chandra and Chandra Vritti, we cannot really understand what a samasa is.
Probably in samasa you can understand, but the deeper implications of all this, the deeper implications
anyway,
will be understood only with the help of this commentary.
To decide, but since I am trained in Paninian tradition, I find it slightly complicated. So if actually the basic question before all the Chandra scholars should be, and they might have already dealt with this question, whether Chandra technique of achieving brevity at the cost of, I don't know whether we can say at the cost of simplicity in the understanding, whether the purpose with which Chandra tried to revise Panini's grammar is really achieved. I mean, you those who are working on Chandra, they might have actually dealt with this question, and I would certainly like to know it maybe at the end of this course from them. After
I mean, there are, if I'm to say something in this regard, I mean, there are this question, I mean, this degrees of how, kind of how you go about, especially in terms of technical terms. Like Chandra prefer to use Savini. And now if you go to the Katantra system, now Katantra tradition, I mean, they say that Panini, I mean, by using the artificial terms, what did he achieve? Why didn't he maintain the traditional terminology? So, I mean, in one place, Durgadasa, one who also wrote the Panchika in the Katantra tradition, says that what is so great, I mean, what is so great in calling Vruksha as Ksha? I mean, so there is no, so I mean, he sarcastically, of course, makes this statement. But I mean, so they say that what Panini achieved by creating all these artificial technical terms, he should have just maintained the terms, because then there is a Artha Laghava. So I think this question of Laghava and Gaurava, I mean, each grammatical tradition has looked at it in a, from slightly different perspective. And I think those who are trained in a particular tradition probably find their own tradition more comfortable, or I don't know, more friendly or something like this. But yes, I mean, this discussion of Laghava and Gaurava has been quite a predominant discussion in all the traditions.
Okay. Actually, that is not my concern when I ask this question. What let me make it more clear. What I would like to know is, going deeper into the history, of course, was this attempt to simplify Panini on the part of Chandra, Kashika, this Katantra, and a few other systems also? Was it really effective, influential, successful as far as the study of grammar in the course of time was concerned? So did it really help?
If you look at
was it just an intellectual exercise? They wanted,
no, I mean,
even
if you look at,
made it further, made further abridgments in his Mugdha. But did it really work? Were the students really happy with that? Does the history tell us anything, and do we find any kind of record in the history? That I don't.
Yeah, we actually have.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Mukesh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Professor Bhatte, we do have pretty clear evidence that this system was very much influential, at least since the 10th century, and this is greatly it is mainly thanks to the achievement of Ratna Mati or Ratna Shishnyana, who was a Sinhalese monk, who wrote this commentary on the Chandravriti, which corresponds to the Nyasa in the Paninian system. And this commentary was very influential both in northern India, at least in the 12th, 13th century, and of course it had exercised a major influence in Sri Lanka on the Moggallana system, where it was basically incorporated in Pali, in terms of Pali. It was certainly very much influential. The problem in northern India is, of course, that Buddhism disappeared more or less, and since then this system was neglected, and it was no more studied. It was studied for some time in Nepal. We do have some evidence of studies of Chandra Vyakaran in Nepal, but then the manuscripts remained either in Kathmandu or somewhere in Tibet, in Shalu and other monasteries, and then it was dead. And now what we try with Mahesh and with Georgian and with some other people, we try to resurrect some of this, but we do have at least the living tradition is in a way in Sri Lanka, because it was in a way incorporated into Moggallana system.
Okay.
If I'm to add, also in Nepal, because we also have some pedagogic handbooks written later on. I mean, Subhuti Chandra, on whom Lata worked. I mean, he was a kosha commentator, and he uses Chandra as his basis for his explanations. And he has also kind of there were texts like Subanta Ratnakara and so on, which were written in the Chandra tradition, which were basically the pedagogic handbooks, and they were seem to be in vogue till 16th, 17th century. In terms of Katantra, of course, Katantra was the most popular school, where we find actually the manuscript, of course, as Professor Bhatte must be already knowing, in entire, I mean, northern part, western part of India, Central Asia. It was also translated into Tibetan, and it also went to Sri Lanka and Myanmar, the neighboring countries. So, I mean, they were quite influential. And in fact, if we see Panini's tradition, after Mahabhashya, we straight away have Kashika. So after a gap of almost 700-800 years, there was nothing there. And during this period, we see that the Katantra was flourishing in south and in the western and in the Kashmir region. We have manuscript evidences for this. And later too, I mean, after Kashika, again, we only have Nyasa, Padamanjiri, and Kaiyata. Again, there is nothing in the Paninian tradition in between, unless we go to the 10th century Dharmakirti, Rupavatara. And Panini's tradition was in a way revised, I think, revived after 12th, 13th century with all these other Prakriya texts. I mean, the Prakriya Kaumudi or Prakriya Sarvasva and Harinamamruta and then Bhattoji, of course. Now Panini, of course, has become a major tradition. But it seems that for first 10 centuries, I really wonder whether Panini was a mainstream, was part of mainstream study or not, because we don't really see much of the works in that tradition written in that period. On the contrary, if you see lots of texts written in the Chandra and Katantra traditions during this period.
Okay.
So,
maybe we can add this Bhagavrutti and Anunyasa in Paninian tradition in the first 1000 years, apart from Kashika and Nyasa.
Sorry?
In Paninian tradition, we may add, apart from Kashika and Nyasa, Anunyasa and Bhagavrutti, both of which are not available today.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Okay. There are a few more questions also, but I think they are not relevant at this point. So, shall we go over to the next sutra?
yeah, we can, yes.
It's a long sutra. First
Yes.
we Panini and then go to Chandra. Avyayam vibhakti samipa samruddhi vyudhyartha bhava tyaya samprati shabda pradurbhava पश्चात् यथानुपूर्व्य यौगपद्य सादृश्य संपत्ति साकल्यांत वचनेषु. So several meanings of avyaya denoted by an avyaya, they are listed in this rule. So avyaya is compounded with a samartha subanta to convey one of these meanings, and then the compound which is formed is called avyayi bhavo. So here the commentary says sup supa iticha vartate. And why doesn't he mention saha and samasa? I don't understand, but all these words, they need to be continued here. Avyayam subantam subantena saha vibhaktadishu artheshu avyayi bhavaha samasaha bhavati. That would be the proper meaning and the proper text also. Anyway, sup supa iticha vartate, only these two words are continued here. Vibhaktadishu artheshu yad avyayam vartate tat samarthena subantena saha samasyate. Yes, samartha also has to be understood while interpreting the sutra. Samarthena subantena saha samasaha bhavati. Avyayi bhavasya samasaha bhavati. Vachana grahanam pratyekam abhisambhadyate. The word vachana at the end of this whole list of meanings has to be connected with each one of these words conveying meanings, like vibhakti. Vibhakti vachane, samipa vachane, samruddhi vachane, and so on. And there is a statement, you can say paribhasha in Sanskrit, it is Paninian tradition saying Gandvante Shruyamanam Padam Pratyekam Abhisambhatyate. So this vachana which comes at the end of this whole Dvandva compound is to be connected with each word separately. This is the meaning of the sentence Vachana Grahanam Pratyekam Abhisambhatyate. Now we go to the examples. I think with each and every example we will understand the meaning, like vibhakti, samipa, samruddhi, etc. So there is no point in explaining the meaning of each and every word right now. Vibhakti vachane tavat. So this is an example of an avyaya conveying the meaning of vibhakti. Now when they say vachana, we find that in tradition they always talk of two kinds of meanings, vachya and dyotya. So there are some meanings which are directly expressed by a particular word. In that case, it is vachya. And sometimes the meanings are indirectly stated. And such meanings are expressed by the word dyotya. They are dyotya. And in Paninian tradition, avyayas, including of course upasarga, nipata, etc., they do not directly express any meaning. They indicate or denote that meaning. So when we say vibhakti vachane, it means that the meaning of a case ending, whatever it is denoted by that avyaya. It is not directly expressed by that avyaya. And the example is Strishu adhikritya katha pravartate. The meaning of this sentence is katha, you can say conversation. Literally, it means also story. Some talk, conversation is going on, pravartate, strishu adhikritya, with reference to women. So women had, from the time immemorial, you can say, from pretty ancient times, a woman had always been, and she is still being the topic of discussion. So Strishu Adhikritya Katha Pravartati. Conversation referring to women is continuing or is going on. This is the meaning underlying the expression adhistri. So adhistri is a avyayi bhava samasa with adhi as an avyaya forming the purva pada, the earlier constituent, and stri forming the uttara pada, the latter or the subsequent constituent. And now we have to find out how this compound is derived in Panini's system. Once again, I must tell you my failure in understanding how Chandra would derive this compound. I mean, this prakriya. Whether we have anything parallel to what I am going to talk about right now, the sutras which I am going to mention while dealing with the prakriya of this form, adhistri. And here on the paper you will find the derivation of adhistri. So strishu adhikritya is the meaning of the compound adhistri, and I have put after that laukika vigraha. So traditionally in Paninian tradition, when we try to give the semantic explanation of any compound in terms of padas, it is called laukika vigraha. Just as in case, again going back to Raja Purusha, Radnyaha Purushaha is a laukika vigraha of Raja Purusha, of the samasa. So vigraha is of two kinds, laukika and alaukika. So here we have Strishu Adhikritya, which is a laukika vigraha of adhistri, and further I have said it is aswapada, which means that this laukika vigraha does not contain the words which form the compound. The swapada, the compound's own words, the words owned by the compound. Because we have Strishu and Adhikritya. The word Adhikritya does not appear in the final compound form. Though the word Strishu in some form it does appear. And therefore, when we have such kind of an analysis, semantic analysis, it is called aswapada laukika vigraha. And then at the next stage, we have alaukika vigraha, that means the constituent analysis in grammatical terms. So we have the pratipadika stri, the case ending so, again the pratipadika, or you can call it avyaya, adhi, and the case ending added to it, that is so. And therefore it is alaukika vigraha in terms of grammatical terms. At the next stage, we have to search for rules which will further lead us to the form adhistri. And then we find a rule in Panini's grammar which defines the term upasarjana in order to decide which is going to be the purva pada and which is going to be the uttara pada. So it is defined as prathama nirdishtam samasa upasarjanam. Samase means samasa shastri. In the rules teaching samasa, dealing with samasa, the word which is mentioned in the nominative, prathama nirdishta, is called upasarjana. So in this rule, avyayam is a word which is mentioned in the prathama. And therefore, avyaya gets the saudhya upasarjana, and therefore here the word adhi becomes upasarjana. Because it becomes upasarjana, it occupies the status of being the purvapada by the rule upasarjanam purvam. There is yet another rule which says that whatever is an upasarjana has to be placed at the earlier place as the purvapada. Upasarjanam purvam. Upasarjana always comes before, it always precedes the other pada. And therefore, adhi occupies the first place. So I have written adhi, sa, stri, so. This is how the place of an avyaya in the avyayi bhava compound, with the exception of one or two rules, is always purvapada. By the rule supo dhatu pratipadika yoho, the case endings are dropped. So we have adhi and stri. And at the next stage, where the compound is formed, adhi stri, and we add the suffix so, say for instance, nominative singular. You can add any suffix, but this is just for an example. We add the suffix so, and as you know, the expression adhistri has now received the designation avyayi bhavo. It is now entitled to be called avyayi bhavo. So it becomes avyayi bhavo, and therefore, by the rule avyayi bhavascha, it becomes an avyaya. Avyayi bhavaha avyaya saunya syat. So it has now got another designation, and that is avyaya. It is avyayi bhava, it is samasa, and now it becomes avyaya. And because it becomes avyaya, there is a rule avyayad ap supaha. This rule teaches the deletion of a case ending which is added to an avyaya. So since adhistri is an avyaya, the case ending sa added to it is dropped. So we have simply adhistri. And then by the rule rasvo napunsake pratipadikasya, the dirgha, the long e of stri becomes short, rasvo. Yeah, one more rule I failed to mention here, and that also is again avyayi bhavascha. That rule says that an avyayi bhava compound is used in napumsaka gender, neuter gender, and therefore it becomes neuter. Actually, it doesn't make much difference in this case because anyway the case ending is going to be dropped by the rule avyayad apsupaha. But that also has to be taken into consideration. So avyayi bhava becomes avyaya, and avyayi bhava is always used in napumsaka. And since it is used in napumsaka, the rule rasvo napumsake pratipadikasya becomes here active here, instrumental here, and therefore we have the form adhistri. It is rasva. Now my question was, while deriving the word adhistri, we used several sutras here. Prathama nirdishtam samasa upasarjanam, upasarjanam purvam, supodhatu pratipadikayogo, avyayi bhavasya avyayadas parav. So much, even it becomes a bit complicated also for those who will be reading it for the first time. So I want to know whether we have something similar in Chandra. Again, I very honestly admit my ignorance about Chandra, and I'm sure you will excuse me for this ignorance. But since I know that there are good scholars of Chandra Vyakarana in the audience, I thought it's a good advantage for me, and I take a benefit of this, and therefore.
Yeah, to give a short answer, yes, in the Chandra tradition too, I mean, we have similar prakriya. I mean, we have all the, we have parallel sutras for all these Paninian sutras, which you mentioned. So the prakriya basically goes in the same way, and as it is explained in the Panjika text, sutra by sutra, step by step. So yes, it's a similar prakriya. Only thing is you will not have the sutra where you call, after you forming a compound, you call it avya bhava. So that particular designation will not be there. Yes, because otherwise, I mean, but he will use the term asankhya ekartha, and he will say, okay, the case endings after the avya bhava, I mean, the asankhya ekartha will be dropped. by such and such rules. So we have all the steps, basically, all the parallel rules. One additional note here is that if I remember correctly, I think there are not, I mean, the Chandra system, we don't have sutras. I mean, we have, like in the Paninian tradition at the end of the second chapter, we have some of the sutras which define the position of terms, like we were just talking about whether it is a Purvapada or Uttarapada. But I think those rules are not there. For that, instead of that, we have a different mechanism there. So otherwise, the whole prakriya goes in the same way as the Paninian one.
But you have something to substitute that.
Yes.
Upasarjanam, purvam. There is something else.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I mean, this what we have in the sutra, like this Pratama Nirdishtam, that also works in the Chandra system. But there are, apart from this, there are some additional rules in the Panini. We have Alpachtaram and all that in the second part of the same system of the Sama section. So those are basically not there. And instead of that, he said, because I mean, in the Chandra tradition, they say ultimately that treatment is also not exhaustive. So you cannot really make rules for each and every compound like this. So there is something which one has to really understand from his experience or from the tradition, from the Vyakhyana only. So there they refrain from forming these additional rules, but this basic rule about the Pratama Nirdishtam and all that, this is there.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
If I may also add something, we do have, of course, in Chandra the Sutra 222 Samkhya, and we have the same example Adhistri also in the Vritti, in the Chandra Vritti, where it is said Stri Shukata Pravritta Adhistri. And now this Adhistri is discussed in the Panjika under the same sutra accordingly, and unfortunately this is not edited yet. We do have only one manuscript. I'm just having now a look at the manuscript. It's not very detailed, but the relevant place is exactly the explanation by Ratna of Adhistri, which he provides under this sutra. Again, it's not edited yet. We still have to do this part.
Okay.
Like I can read to you what I can see now in the manuscript. If you
maybe later.
Yeah.
Maybe later, because I'm interested in this particular illustration. These three.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I think now we can go to the next.
Sorry, so I want to ask something. Can I ask you something? Sensei?
Yes, Chojin. Yeah. You want to say something?
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
So I want to ask you the small question. So in the Laukika Vigraha, we have Adi. Stri plus Sup plus Adi, and maybe Su. Yeah. The affix Su is added after Adi, isn't it? In the yes. So I'm wondering why Su is selected here.
Because it is a Pratipadika.
Yes, I know. Also, of course, we have to apply the rules. Spa, we need Su. I know Su, but why Su is added? Not or just or just.
How you mean that? It depends upon what kind of meaning it conveys. Huh? So does Adi convey accusative meaning? Does it convey instrumental or any other meaning? Yeah. And ultimately that case ending is going to be dropped. Because it's an avyaya.
Yes.
So nominative singular is generally regarded as vibhakti sarvanama. As neuter is regarded as linga sarvanama.
I see.
In the sense that it denotes anything. Sarvesham nama.
Okay.
Sarvesham nama.
Okay. Thank you so much.
So, shall we go further then? Just one more thing I would like to add to this discussion is this use of locative, stri shu. What does it indicate? What does this saptami indicate? Is the question. So when we go back to Panini Sutras, this is an adhikarana. Saptami conveys adhikarana, and adhikarana further denotes adhar. And the commentator says that adhara or substratum is of three kinds. Adharaha tridha, they say. Aupashleshikaha, abhivyapakaha, and vaishayikaha. So there are three kinds of adhara. A substratum can either be aupashleshika through connection. So for instance, if you sit on a ground is the substratum, and the connection of the ground with you is upashlesha, sanyoga sambandha. You are connected with the ground through the relation of upashlesha, sanyoga. Sometimes it is abhivyapaka, it pervades the whole thing. For instance, the example they gave is tileshu tailam. So oil in sesame seeds. So it pervades the whole of this, the grain. It just doesn't stay in one corner at one place. So therefore it is abhivyapaka. Or you can say Vishwasmin Brahma Vartate, according to Vedantins. Brahma is all pervading. And then the third kind of adhara is Vaishayika. So it is related through the relation of Vishaya. With regard to, of course, we say. So here we have Vaishayika Adhara or Vaishayika Adhikarana in the sense of Vishaya. So the connection is through Vishaya. Like, there is an expression, say, Mokshe Ichcha Vartati. That is an example you will find in the commentaries. Mokshe Ichcha Vartati. Mama idanim chaya pane ichcha vartate. So this saptami is generally called Vishaya Saptami. So Stri Shu is an illustration of Vishaya Saptami. It is Adhikarane Saptami, of course, but this Adhikarana is further of a specific kind, and that kind is Vishaya. So this was some kind of an additional observation which I wanted to make before we go to the next next example. The next example is regarding the meaning Samipa. Samipa Vachane. So there is an avyaya which conveys the meaning Samipa, near, close to. And the illustration given is Upakumbham. So I have given again the prakriya for arriving at the word Upakumbham, the samasa Upakumbham. Of course, I don't think it is necessary to give me prakriyas at each and every step, but I found that at least these two may be some kind of representative prakriyas. And if you find there is something deviating this general order, arrangement of prakriyas, then we will talk about that point. So here, Upakumbham, Laukika Vigraha is Kumbhasya Samipam. This Vigraha is also a Swapada because the word Samipa is not found in the compound itself. And then in Alaukika Vigraha, Kumbha Sa Upasa, then by the same rule, Prathama Nirdishtam and Upasarjanam Purvam, there is a Purva Nipata, they call it traditionally Purva Nipata. So Upa becomes a Purva Pada. By the rule Supodhatu Pratipadika Yoho, we have elision of case endings, Upakumbha, and here also we add the case ending Sa just to arrive at the finished word. And there is something special about avyayi bhava, and therefore I have to mention it here. So the rule, after we add sa, actually what we was expecting is the deletion of sa by the rule avyayad apsupaha, as we did it in case of adhistri. The case ending after every avyaya is dropped. And here we have upakumbha, which is an avyayi bhava, and because it is an avyayi bhava, it is also called avyaya, and therefore by the rule avyayad apsupaha, sa has to be dropped. But there is some exception, and that is stated in the rule no avyayi bhavad ataha tu apanchamyaha. So this rule says the case ending added after an avyayi bhava which ends in short a, ataha akarantat avyayi bhavat supaha no look. The look which is taught by the rule avyayad apsupaha does not take place if it is an avyayi bhava ending in o. Then what happens? Amtu apanchamyaha. But the case ending, whatever case ending you add after that, is substituted by except in the case of apanchamya. So apanchamya we keep aside for the time being. And therefore, so instead of being dropped, is replaced by So we have upakumbha and further by the rule atogune, which is a sandhi rule, we have the sandhi between o of kumbha and the following o, resulting into short o. And thus we have the compound, the finished word of that compound, pada of that compound, upakumbham. So this is how it happens in Panini, and I'm sure something similar must be there in Chandra, as Mahesh told earlier, that even in the earlier case, there are relevant sutras in Chandra. So I don't think it is necessary to go to this Chandra Prakriya. This is about Kumbhasya Samipam Upakumbham, which means near the pot. And Upamanikam also means near the pot or a water jar. Manika means a water jar. So both the words, they convey almost the same meaning, or you can say similar meaning. Now we go to the third, Samruddhi. Samruddhi is literally, it means prosperity, wealth. Here it is rendered as Ruddhehe Adhikyam. Ruddhi means growth. It means the same as Vruddhi. Vruddhi and Ruddhi, they mean the same thing. Growth or increase. And growth or increase not physical, but it is generally, it refers to growth or increase in wealth, in money, in financial condition, etc. So Ruddhi, growth, and Samruddhi is Ruddhehe Adhikyam. So further Ruddhi is Samruddhi. That means addition or excess of growth. So opulence, you can say, prosperity, abundance of growth, something like that. If it is indicated by an avyayu, and if it is semantically connected with another subanta, then we have avyayi bhava samas. And here we have an example, samruddhihi madranam sumudram. And similarly, Sumagadham, Vartate, Madranam Samvrittihi Vartate. Madra, Magadha, etc. These are the ancient names of some regions, some countries, either in India or outside India, closer to India, because the boundaries in the course of history, they have always been changing. And Madra has been identified with different places by historians. So let us not go into these details. Let us be happy with this much knowledge that Madra is an ancient name of a particular region in or near today's India. So these Madras, they were very rich. This country was very prosperous, and therefore he says Sumatram Vartate. The Prakriya is almost the same, except that here we have a different Avyaya. Earlier it was Adhi, then it was Upa, and now we have Su. Sumadram, Sumagadham. Su conveys many things. Su conveys beautiful, good, and things similar to that. And here it conveys prosperity. But it always conveys something good, as Dur conveys something bad always. So the next one is Vriddhi. Vriddhi is actually derived by adding the upasarga V to the word Ruddhi. So here also there is Ruddhi, but V is an upasarga which again conveys something negative. Vigata Ruddhihi. Ruddhi gone away, vanished, disappear. That is Vriddhi. And therefore it is rendered here as Ruddhehe Abhavaha, absence of Ruddhi, absence of growth. So non-prosperity or scarcity. So earlier it was Ruddhi and then it went away, or it did not grow at all. Ruddhehe Abhavaha. Gavadikanam Ruddhehe Abhavaha Durgavadikam. The avyaya we have here is Dur. Durgavadikam. Gavadika, I tried to find out the meaning of this word, but it appears to be again the name of a country or a region. But I couldn't find it in the dictionary. Maybe you can check. Perhaps in a larger dictionary you will find it. I tried to trace it in Munir Williams and Apte and similar small dictionaries. Perhaps you can find it in Road Link, I don't know. Durgavadikam, which means absence of prosperity of Gavadikas, poverty of Gavadikas. So in all these cases, what you will have to note is that the meaning of the avyaya is always prominent. The meaning conveyed by, say, Adhi also is regarding, and then Upoid, Samipa, close, prosperity or absence of prosperity. They always find a prominent place in the meaning of the whole compound. They are the main components of the meaning. Dur yavanam vartate. So yavananam vriddhi. Yavana also signifies a particular region, a country. And you know, these names of countries or regions, they at the same time they convey or they denote the people who inhabit those regions. Therefore, Yavananam Vriddhi means Yavanas, people, they are poor. That also could be the meaning of Dur Yavanam. Now the next one is Arthabhava. Arthasya Abhava. Artha is here it is used in the sense of object, entity. So absence of object as absence of a particular thing, vastu, is arthabhava, and that also is conveyed by an avyaya. Abhavo makshikanam nirmakshikam nirmashakam vartate. So this arthabhava is denoted by the avyaya nir here. And thus we have makshikanam abhava, which is a very good thing, welcome thing. Similarly, mashakanam abhava. Makshika is a makshika means a fly, and mashaka means mosquito. So a place in which either makshikas or mashakas are absent is called nirmakshikam and nirmashakam. Abhavo makshikanam nirmakshikam. Perhaps you might be remembering this particular word used by Kalidasa in Shakuntalam in the very first act, where Vidushaka says, Krutam Tvaya Nirmakshikam Idanim Bruhi. So the king, Dushyanta, wants to share his secret with his friend Vidushaka. But there are some people, some objects around, and he doesn't want anyone to know it. Therefore, he very cleverly manages to send all these persons and yes, away. And then there is nobody there except the king and his friend, and therefore the friend says, Krutam Tvaya Nirmakshikam. Atyayaha. The next meaning is Atyayo. Atyayaha abhutatvam atikramaha. Atyaya is abhutatva. Abhutatva actually means not being there. Abhuta. But it refers to atikrama. He says atikrama is a better meaning actually. It's not just absence, abhutatva, but it is atikrama is crossing beyond, passing away. So it implies that there's something was already in existence and then it has gone away, it has passed away, it has disappeared. So this kind of abhava is known as dvamsa or pradvamsa bhava. So Nayayikas, they talk of 3 or 4 kinds of abhavas. Pragabhava, then pradvamsa bhava, atyanta bhava, and anyanya bhava. So 4 kinds of abhava are there. Pragabhava refers to the absence of a thing before it comes into existence. So Idanim Ghataha Nasti is an example of Pragabhava. So Ghata, the pot which is still not being made, is absent. So Idanim Ghataha Nasti is Pragabhava. And after Ghata comes into existence but it is broken, then we say Pradvamsa Bhava. So Ghato Nashtaha is an example of Pradvamsa Bhava. Then it is Anyanya Bhava, Ghata Patono. Ghata and Pata. Ghata is not a Pata. So it's a relative abhava. Therefore, it is called Anyanya Abhava. Gataha Patona, Pataha Gato. They are not each other. And Atyanta Bhava is absolute abhava. That means that thing never existed on the earth and it will never exist in future also. It is Atyanta Bhava. And it refers to things like, they say Shashashrunga, the horn of a heron, or Kurmakshira, or even you can say water in the mirage, Mruga Jala Jala. water in the mirage. So mirage is there, but there is no water in, and will never be there in future also. So such things which never existed and which will never exist, they are put under the category of Atyanta Bhava. Here in this particular case, we have an example of Pradhvamsa Bhava, they say, Atikrama, that is passing away, going beyond and diminishing, of course, disappearing. And therefore the example is Atitani Himani Nirhimam. So earlier snow was there during the winter, but now summer has started and all snow has melted, and therefore it is now Nirhimam. Similarly, Nishitam. With the arrival of summer, there is no more Shita. There is no more cold. Traditional commentaries, they have tried to distinguish between Atyaya and Arthabhava, because both they refer to absence, they refer to something which is non-existent. Arthabhava vastunaha abhavaha and Atyayaha also vastunaha abhavaha. In both the cases, it is absence of the thing. And they say that Artha Bhava is Atyanta Bhava, absolute non-existence. Atyaya, destruction, they say, decay, end, passing away. Whereas in this earlier case, it is Artha Bhava, it's not a total destruction. This is how they try to distinguish between the two, the commentators, because it is always, they always consider it their duty to justify Panini's use of words which sometimes appear to be redundant. Shall we continue further or it's time? I don't know. I don't have the...
Yeah, it's time. So I think probably we can stop here for today and we can complete the rule on Monday. Yeah, so the time is already up. So let us stop here. So I wish you all a very nice weekend, and we'll meet again on Monday at 4:30. So yes, so let us thank Professor Bhate let me thank her on behalf of all of us.
You don't need to thank me, Mahesh, every time.
Every time a new class, and yes, no, no, it's
thank the
fine.
audience.
Yeah. So thank you very much, and we'll meet again on Monday, and we'll continue with the remaining examples of this sutra, because it's a pretty long sutra, and let's meet again on Monday. Yes. Okay. So thank you very much. Thanks a lot, ma'am, and thank you everybody for joining.
Bye.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Bye bye.
Yes, sir.